Hey friends, it's Julie from Plan to Create, and I have been getting a lot of questions recently about the pens I use in my Hobonichi, about the Tombow markers, and about inks. And so I wanted to film videos on those. I have already done the pens and the markers. I will try to give you a little card up there. And today this one is all about the inks that I use in my Hobonichi. I want to start off by saying that the bottom line is Tombow River paper is not super stamp friendly. Boom, done, said. I am not a huge fan of stamping in my Hobonichi, but I do like to incorporate a few things, and so I will talk to you about how I do that. I want to preface this by saying that every time I talk about stamping in this thinner paper, someone brings up the idea of using the chalk inks, like a Versamagic chalk ink, and that is a really good idea. Those are pigment inks, so that means that the ink sits on top of the paper instead of soaking down through. The drawback to that is that it takes longer to dry, and I am not a patient girl. I might stamp something 1 second and the next minute I'm like, ooh, yeah, I need to write that. And if I go to write and I smear it with my hand, that will just frustrate me. So I personally prefer to use dye-based inks and just have figured out some ways to make that work inside my planner, and I'm going to share those tips with you in this video as well. So let me walk you through the actual inks I'm using. I'm going to give you the Tombow matchups. I do not have perfect matchups, but I'll show you kind of how I'm matching them up. And then I'm going to give you about 6 tips for stamping in your planner, in your Hobonichi, or in any planner that you might be using. In my opinion, there is no one brand that is just always going to be safe for your planner. I think no matter which brand you choose, you have to be selective with your colors, but I do want to share that I primarily use Catherine Pooler inks and Close to My Heart in all of my crafting. I have a few inks coming from the stamp market, and I have picked up some Color Theory inks from Studio Calico as well. But for the most part, I stick with these 2 brands. There's just a lot of things about this particular brand that I really love. Catherine Pooler, I like to buy these little sets from scrapbook.com. I've picked this one up from there as well. And I just think she has a really great array of colors, and I've just found them to be instantly friendly. So I'm gonna walk you through the actual dye inks that I use, and then I'll give you the color matchups for the Tombow in case you're interested in that as well. This color is called Pebble. It is Close to My Heart, Linen, Mink, Bashful, which I love, but it's no longer available, so Ballerina is what is available, and it's a really great, there's hardly any difference, but I'm just weird, and of course I like the one that's no longer available. And then we have Almond, Sandcastle from Catherine Pooler, and Sweet 16 from Catherine Pooler. I used to have a larger one of these, but when we moved, I let a bunch of my inks go. I just kept the minis, and I do love the idea of buying like the smaller cubes and minis because you can test out a little bit more for your money, and they are simple and easy to store. However, these are super large looking, but they store so nicely and compactly on top of each other that it's really working out well for me as well. So I stamped all of these out the other day, and you guys, I was just so disappointed because at the end of the day, I feel like when I turned the page to see the back side, I was just like, oh, like you can see, you can really, it's not as friendly as I wanted them to be, all of these inks. Within that, you can see that there are some that perform a little bit better than others, but all in all, you obviously see some shadowing here. After a couple of nights sleep now and just kind of mulling through this, I'm starting to realize like you can see everything in the Hobonichi. Like when I turn this page, you can see the print from the next page coming through just because it's printed in that darker gray. Shadowing in the Hobonichi, it's just a thing, and it's ultimately how comfortable you are with it that is going to determine the colors that you might want to stamp in. So as I look at here, I'm actually going to grab the Tombows and kind of swipe them in here, and I'm hoping you guys can see. But up here in the corner, it's hardly visible, but I did stamp, and I wish that I had, I feel like if I put this underneath that, can you guys see that a little bit better? You can see with a little bit more solid image underneath it. But this is the Close to My Heart Linen, and there's the N89. And I'll try to bring that up. But ultimately, I think you can agree, it's a really difficult color to see. However, I will say, if you just want to build some framework in your planner, like say you want to come through and add a meal plan stamp or something to make a section for yourself, it doesn't require a huge bold statement. I write over that ultimately. So using a soft light color is just a slight little signal to me that, hey, I'm saving that spot for something, so don't write on it. And that can be as effective as anything else. So don't write out the linen. It is light, but it is a really nice matchup with this N89. This Close to My Heart Pebble is a great matchup for this N95. 800 I think works really nicely with the ballerina. I think maybe 850 is slightly like more peachy color, so that could work a little bit well with Bashful. But bottom line, I mean, all of these are light. They're all kind of mix and match. This 761 is a little bit bolder, and it actually starts to look a little bit more like the stamp colors. So any of those three pinks would be great. I also happen to have this darker 772, and I will swipe it here just to show you guys up top. It's honestly really comparable with the ink colors as well. So I'll keep that one out here to keep in mind. For the almond and the sandcastle, I did not get a good image on this stamp because I was like, I'm at the end of the book, there's air underneath, and I just didn't get it. You really do need to stamp on a more solid surface or slide like a mouse pad under would have been wise, but I don't have one handy, so I did not. 990, and now I'll do the 942. Each of these just, they go really nicely with those warm colored inks. Over here to the Close to My Heart Mink. This is probably my favorite ink color, and primarily because when I stamp it, I can see it. These are so light that they really hardly show up. When I stamp this, I can see it, and to be honest, yes, you can see some shadowing through there, but when I've used it on my pages, it hasn't really bothered me. So this one is definitely a big winner for me. I also, I didn't stamp the Sweet 16 on here, but it is a really, really great matchup. I can show you back here on my pages. I did it this week. If I were to just color in here, it's not exact match, but it's really close. And so that's a very easy, fun one. And now for my general tips for stamping in your planner, whether that's a Hobonichi or anything else. Tip number one, choose light colors. So I basically already touched on that, but like I have this charcoal color from Close to My Heart, but you're not going to see me direct stamping this in my Hobonichi. It's just a little bit too dark and not friendly. Tip number two is to use light lined stamps. So you're gonna see here, this stamp that I chose to sample in is just this really lightly lined stamp. Heavier stamps like even this Yay, but for sure this hexagon, those have a lot of ink on them, like per capita. So when you put those on a planner, there's just a better chance that a lot of ink is gonna potentially soak through into your page. The lightest color I possibly have, this linen, I did go ahead and sample that in the hexagon because I was curious, and it's not too bad. I mean, it's gonna show up eventually, like it's there, but really in the big scheme of things, it's not bad. But that is something that I would definitely only use your lightest colors for. If you have really solid images, you just want to stick to your lightest colors. You can get away with a little bit more fudging, darker colors when they're the lightly lined stamps. Okay, so I mentioned this charcoal ink. It's super dark, and I have an example here. This is charcoal 1, charcoal 2, charcoal 3. So there's something called first, second, and third generation stamping. But basically when you first ink up your stamp, you stamp once, and that's first generation. Normally you would go back and ink again, but instead you go directly to paper for generation 2, directly to paper for generation 3 without re-inking your stamp, and then you get this lighter image each time. This actually works pretty well here in the Hobonichi, and it's okay for you to ink, stamp on scratch paper, and then come over if you're using a darker color. So just keep that in mind, but that is one way to use a darker color that you already have on hand inside a planner, is by first stamping it off onto a different surface and then coming back for that second or that third generation stamp. This is going to tie into my fourth tip, and that is to always test first. I cannot emphasize that enough. We can get a little bold and be like, oh yeah, I'm going to stamp that off and then stamp it into my Hobonichi. I don't recommend that. These extra little pages here in the back are really meant to give you some, test papers for you to test out your inks. I still, even though I've used these and I'm pretty familiar with them, I still occasionally just like do a little test and just see and make sure, like when I'm gonna go use this in my planner, is it really gonna show up the way I want? Just a little refresher. So testing onto the type of paper that you want to use ultimately is something I cannot emphasize enough. My fifth tip deals with new inks that you might order, and when they come to you, they're juiced up, they're ready to go. Particularly dye inks, they're not meant for this paper. They are meant to like hardcore, go onto nice thick cardstock that can handle a lot of ink, and so juicier stamps, that's a good thing. That's really nice. But if you're bringing those onto planner sheets of paper, it's not as nice. So something that I do recommend, it seems counterintuitive and crazy, but just to take that ink pad and daub it off onto scratch paper, anything else, and do a full smush, get off some extra ink. I've done that to this guy so you can see kind of some of that white space. That's where ink is like not as collected, and when I go to ink up my stamps, it's going to provide some color to transfer, but it's just not going to be juicy and just soak down into my pages. So that's a tip. Some of you, that probably makes you really uncomfortable. These companies have re-inkers that you can purchase, so if you feel like you've dried it out and can no longer use it, you could always dabble some ink on there. It's kind of a game, like add ink and then take some away. It's a little bit of a dance. It's just something that works for me. Someone told me that once and I have clung to that, and I do that typically with almost all of my new inks. For planners, I think a dry ink pad is like an okay thing. Not dry, but dry-ish. Okay, so for this last tip, I'm gonna pull out some footage that I filmed for this video that I filmed the first time. This is like the 900th time I filmed this, fun fact. But yeah, I went ahead and I wanted to mention that when you're scared to stamp like one of those darker colors into your planner, this flamingo ink color is beautiful, but I probably wouldn't put it direct to Tombow River paper. So pulling out a sticker sheet like Avery Labels sheet, or even my sticker sheets from the planner spot. It's kind of fun to personalize them and to add a little bit of color. So I just wanted to show you guys that as another tip for stamping in your planners. So when you're just completely scared to stamp, stickers are a safe place to do that, and then to transfer them into your planner. Okay, so I have talked you through what I try to do in my Hobonichi, what is working relatively well for me, but the bottom line is, and I will say it again, the Hobonichi cousin is not a particularly friendly place to stamp. It's doable, it's okay, but do I stress out a little bit each time? Yes. So I love to stamp. I have a collection of stamps. I love inks. This is my way of getting creative because I'm not artistic, and so I want to practice this in my life. I want to be able to do this, and if my planner, you know, my Hobonichi isn't the spot, then I have searched out a couple of options where I can do it. So I showed you this one in my So Many Planners, So Little Time video. It's a Hemlock and Oak. It's beautiful, thick white paper. This is an Archer and Olive planner. It actually does have monthly calendars and weekly formats in here. They're just undated for you, so you get to decide how you want to use them. I think that April from Mom Craft Run used something similar to this all last year, and I just watched her and admired her because she stamped her little heart out in it, and I was like, I want to do that. So I have filmed a little bit of how I set up January. I'll give you a quick little sneak. I have had a hard time committing to one or the other of these because I love them both. They're actually both, like, I have pros and cons to each. But I wanted to let you guys know that I will be doing more of my stamping. You can see here I was testing out some colors. But I'll be doing a little bit more of my stamping, my free stamping in here. This is a planner, but I'm not using it as a planner. I'm using it as a journal, and not just a journal, but a creative journal, one where I can stamp, I can use my colors. This month have been sticking primarily to those same colors that I was using in my Hobonichi, but I also plan to use some of those darker colors. This one I have found I can use the charcoal, like, lo and behold, and so I've actually purchased a few more close to my heart colors that normally I would be afraid of, and I'm working them in, and you guys, it just feels good. I just needed a place to play. So I'm really trying to set aside my Hobonichi as more of my function. I'm trying to build systems in here to remind myself of the tasks I need to get done, and I'm using one of these, to be more of that creative outlet, and it feels really good. It's not like I won't do anything creative in here because it has to be pretty. I have to want to come back into this, but I really do feel that that release has been coming out through these guys, and it feels awesome. So I've actually filmed the footage of how I set January up here, so be watching for a create with me. It's not really a plan with me because it's just kind of sitting down and creating. If that's something you guys are interested in, let me know. I'll definitely put that video up. I just need to kind of walk through it a little bit more tightly. I mentioned that Mom Run Craft, I have a hard time remembering the order of names. April, she really inspired me to pull out this Archer and Olive, but also my little journal here on YouTube. Heba is an amazing inspiration for that as well. She keeps a daily journal, so every month she sets up a month, and then every night she just goes in and writes her stories, but she has her month all set up. So I'm gonna link each of those guys below. I just know that I'm getting inspiration from other people, I'm executing it, and it feels really good. So that is a fun way for me to just put a bunch of those stamps to use that I've been collecting, and not just let them sit around, but actually get to use them and play with them and have fun and not worry about bleeding through the pages, gosh dang it. It's been kind of a journey, this video. A few times I didn't think it was gonna happen, but I did want to just give you an honest perspective. I'm not gonna come on here and recommend a bunch of colors and then have you guys get them and be frustrated. That would be terrible to me. So I do want to be honest about it. I do feel that they're doable, and it's absolutely, like I said, just a matter of your comfortability with shadowing through. Some of you might not be bothered by any of this, and me, I'm like, oh, I don't want to see that. But that, quite frankly, is the charcoal, so that's probably like the worst it could get. And you know, you can kind of see it from there. It's not the end of the world. It felt like it was when I was filming this, and it didn't work out the way I wanted. But yeah, so I hope that that gives you guys some honest reviews on these products. All right, so that pretty much sums up the products that I've kept in the way of pens, markers, and inks. I have a thorough video kind of showing you, walking you through my stamp collection, and I didn't slim it down too much when I moved. I kept a lot of those because I really had always narrowed it down to a certain amount of real estate. So I'll share a little bit more of my space as I get more and more comfortable. I'm still working on it, and I'm still really happy. I feel like as much as I think I would like a big, huge office again where I can take over the entire room and all the storage, ultimately that leads me to a little bit of just overwhelm, you know, when there's just too much, or there's also just the products that just don't get used because I can only use so many and I'm really reaching for the same things. It's kind of like a full closet when you only wear like 25% of your wardrobe. Why are you staring at the 80%? Just clear it out and use what you love. So that's kind of my philosophy these days going forward with my planning supplies. So I'm giving you guys a really good sneak at, you know, what I have kept and the ones that I really do use. I really appreciate you joining me. If you have not had the opportunity to subscribe yet and you do enjoy my content, I would appreciate you joining me here. Also, just make sure that you like the video if it's something that you did like. That lets YouTube know that it's a safe video to promote for other people too. Those are great ways to support me, and of course I appreciate you guys using my links. I do have affiliate partnerships with some of these companies like Close to My Heart, Studio Calico. These are brands that I love. I'm really honored to be able to be in a relationship with these companies, and that's part of what you guys do when you like and you support my channel. It lets these brands know that, yeah, Julie has content and we like to see it, and so that encourages them to work with me, and I do appreciate that. That is kind of a dream of mine, is to have that representation with different brands that I love, and so thank you for being a part of that as you support me here. And I do keep an updated list on my Instagram bio as well. I try to link everything below in these videos, but there's always just like a generic, you know, a quick ticket to one of those shops that will give me some credit that maybe I've sent you their direction. So if you have the time to click those, I always appreciate it, and just thank you in advance. All right, you guys, until next time, take care.